Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us once again. And those of you joining us for the first time, excuse me, thank you. A very special thanks to you, actually. Tonight, I have a very special young lady, friend of mine, who lives in Trinidad. I will introduce you to her after the break. But before that, I want to emphasize the importance of believing in an idea. Tonight, we will explore the importance of starting your own business, and I mean that surrounds having an idea and believing in it. I have said on this show many times before that most of the things we use today, as a matter of fact, everything we use today, the latest in technology and so on, started with an idea. Social movements started with an idea. And sometimes I sit and I wonder what would have happened if the likes of Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and some of these greats had gotten scared, or maybe they did, but had succumbed to those fears and not pursue their ideas. What would have happened today? The medium through which we are communicating today is made possible because somebody had the courage to pursue their idea. As a result of that, I am encouraged to invite people to come on this show every week to talk about their stories, talk about their journeys. And also because I believe that each of us, there is a story. There are experiences, there are successes, and of course, my favorite, challenges. Not that I'm a pessimist, but I am especially drawn to challenges and how people overcome them, because that to me defines who a person really is, the true metal of a person. And so tonight I'm especially happy to have this conversation with Miss Turkessa Blades. She is a single parent and also an entrepreneur, and that is very intriguing to me. Last week we had my friend Karen Gray, who is a real estate broker, and she spoke a lot about women in business. The whole conversation is not going to be that, but I promise you that tonight we are going to have an interesting journey or trip with Turkessa's journey. So anyway, we have a packed show, and so I don't want to spend too much time on my monologue. I'll take a break, and when we return, Miss Turkessa Blades. We are back. Excuse me, losing my voice, it seems. We are back, and for those of you who are now tuning in, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. The lovely lady next to me is Miss Turkessa Blades. Turkessa, good evening.
Hi, Solomon. Good night.
How are you?
Good evening. Sorry.
How are you?
A bit tired, but I'm good.
Tired. Well, then that means we can have a very exciting show then.
Yeah, you never know what I'm gonna say when I'm
It
tired.
means I can catch you off guard. You're too sharp.
Nah.
Nah, okay, okay. Well, I am going to start with your bio, your brief bio.
Okay.
Born on the 4th of November 1975, is a sole legal...
Tell the whole world my age.
Well, you said it. You said it. So, see, okay. Sole legal practitioner in Trinidad and Tobago. Was born in Georgetown, Guyana, to a Trinidadian mother and a Barbadian father. Mother of a daughter. Soleil Lourdes Elizabeth Blades, and resides in St. Joseph, Trinidad. Turkessa graduated from the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, Barbados in 1997 with a Bachelor of Laws. She subsequently attended the U. Wooding Law School in Trinidad, graduating in 1999 with her legal education certificate. Thereafter, she was called to the bar in Trinidad and Tobago in October 1999. In 2003, Turkessa completed her certification as a corporate secretary from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators from the United Kingdom. And there is more, but I want to surprise the audience. I want to have this conversation with you. Turkessa, thank you for joining us on CWS.
It's my pleasure.
So where did you grow up?
I basically grew up in Guyana, per se, with nitbits in Trinidad and Barbados, but basically Guyana.
What is your favorite memory from high school?
Oh, oh my goodness. I have plenty. I had a good time in high school, so I have lots of good memories in high school. I can't pinpoint one. I had a gang, because I have to call us a gang. It was 8 girls in all. We did everything together. We did Steelman, Girl Guides, parties, modeling shows, lessons together. We did practically everything together. And we thought that, for the time frame that we were together, we were just enjoying high school, having a good time. I found out only when I hit sixth form how much people hated us, but we didn't care. So
You have 2 countries you can claim as home. One is Guyana, where you were born, and the other Trinidad, where you currently reside and run your own business. How has these 2 diverse cultures influenced who you are as a person?
well, I think from inception, just being in Guyana and growing up in Guyana and living in a Trinidadian home, because with your mother being Trinidadian, everything in your house was Trinidadian, your food was Trinidadian. People at one point in time didn't believe that I was born in Trinidad, because when you came to my house, you had pilau, you didn't have cook up, you had oil down, you didn't have metaji. We had a different kind of callaloo. Our customs and norms within that small sphere was a lot different from what was happening outside of that home. So, the cultural influence actually really has helped me in dealing with people. We always talk about that term about emotional intelligence. Well, having to live in the Caribbean on a whole, I think anybody would realize that even though we've come from the same historical background as islands all in a row, we all have our differences, and being a part of varying aspects of the Caribbean has helped me to appreciate that, understand it, respect it, and deal with people accordingly for it, and not be confused by it so much. I think my father taught me more about that than anything else, because I after a while I started to criticize my Bajan heritage because I didn't understand it, and he actually sat me down and made me realize that, listen, what you're experiencing is just a different part of culture, and you just have to recognize that this is your half. This is how this half behaves. So it's not for you to criticize or misjudge. Understand it for what it is and deal with it accordingly.
Now, you spoke of attending school and having so much fun, with your other 7 friends, and doing all sorts of things, and I dare say mischief, but you didn't say that. But what I want to ask you, though, is what was it like growing up in Guyana as the daughter of a Caribbean diplomat?
Well, while being in it, I didn't think that it was different for me. There was no mischief. I was a good girl.
Okay.
And my friends were all good girls. We had plenty opportunities to get up into mischief, but when your parents give you that much trust, you don't want to ruin that trust. So you kind of...
I hear that.
You kind of hold on to it. And even though everybody knew that there was some difference in my home and that I would have had some privileges as compared to most, especially during the Burnham era time, my parents always make sure that you were always grounded. So never feel that you were better than or you were privileged above. And the Guyanese culture was of such that even if you pretended to be better than or above, you were chastised. So it was not as if you wanted to go down that road. For me as a person, I was always kind of very humble, and it definitely came from within my home. So I didn't feel any different. I didn't treat people any different. I had friends from extremely poor backgrounds to friends from very rich backgrounds, and everybody landed in my house the same way, eating the same foods. I didn't invite one group on a Friday and another group on a Saturday. Everybody came together. It didn't influence me in such a way to be negative. I think it influenced me in a positive way because it showed me that you can have so much and lose it. And the best thing for you to do is to use it to the best of your advantage. And I think that's what I did with it.
I like that. I like that. I'll remember that and get back to that particular statement later on in the show. When did you discover you wanted to study law?
Surprisingly, growing up, I always wanted to be a vet. I loved animals. I put my family through the worst. I had a parrot, a turtle, dogs. I had the works. And as I got into fifth form, I realized I didn't like biology. There's no way you can be a vet and not like biology. And I had a friend whose father was the attorney general at the time, and I went into their room, and he had this small little book called Learning the Law. And I read the book, and for some reason, after reading that book, I said, you know what, I think I can do very well at law. And I started to explore the options. And it was just from reading that book, I said, listen, I'm just going to do law. I'm going to be a lawyer. It wasn't a passion I had from when I was young, but I realized for some unforeseen reason, it was in my path because it has opened opportunities for me to do a lot of things just besides being a lawyer, you know? So.
And in March 2010, you ventured into developing your own legal practice. Can you tell us how you started your own business?
Well, I was thinking about it for about 2 to 3 years before, but a lot of things happened along the way that prevented me from not getting into it. One being the birth of my daughter. And I was actually working for a government entity, and I realized that, I'd come to the point where I felt as though I was developing everybody else's business, and I'm leaving the option that I've always had available to myself, which is to open a business. And I have a friend who kept nagging me for 2 years. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? So I got my letterheads 2 years before. I knew what my cards were going to look like. I knew exactly where I was going to practice out of. I just had to start. And in March of 2010, a court application came my way. That same friend actually came to my house one Sunday. He was served with some documents. And he said, are you ready to start your own practice? And I said, I was ready 2 years ago. I just don't know why I don't take the nudge. And he pulled out this application on the veranda, and he just handed it to me. He said, well, okay, this is your first matter. And I said, okay. And I jumped straight into it from then.
My next
how it started.
My next question is how did you land your first big client? Was that your first big client, or?
Well, I would say that was my first big matter per se. I've never really measured any other matters because, I worked for the state before. And I would have been a part of much bigger matters while in the state. Your name would have been on judgments and they would have been published and all of that. But on my own volition, in my own practice, I would always say that really was my biggest matter that propelled me, pushed me out there.
So how do you balance parenting with the demands of running your own business as a single parent?
Woo! Where do I start? How do I balance? I think it's just basically bad mind, because parenting and being a mother is a very important role for me. I don't take it for granted. I don't want my child to grow up in somebody else's hands. I must be the most influential aspect of my child's life. So what that means is that I have to make the time to always be there. Spend time, do quality stuff with her. And doing law, which is a jealous mistress, and balancing that is like a miracle. So my time management has to be top notch. And if anybody knows me, time and me don't seem to go entwined. But in having Soleil, I've come to a point that when I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, my entire day is planned. What time I'm leaving the house, I'm dropping her off, how much time I'm spending with which client, how much time I have in court, what do I have to do after, to the point when I have to pick her up. I've had to make the choices of some days I can't pick her up because I have to work late. I mean, one must make a living. So as much as I want to play and have a good time with my daughter, I have to make a living. So I structured in such a way that there's certain days I don't pick her up. So I know on those days I can work till 11 o'clock at night. But there are other days that I come home, I put her to bed, I read the story, and I crash. Because by the time you hit the bed, that's what I do. I crash.
You know, and when I was creating your ad, or rather, on your ad states trials and triumphs of running your own business. What, in your opinion, are some of the trials and triumphs in building a business from scratch, especially as a single parent?
Well, I'll start with what you should not do because, I mean, even though I would have started, I know I have not done a few things. There were a few things that I needed to do much better that I didn't. And I've learned from that. But, you know, there's some uninfluential factors that get in the way ever so often that throw you off path that you have to deal with. But you know, in starting your own business, there are a few things that you need to recognize. One, it's your business. So you have to work very hard at it. You are the sole maker and breaker of that business. Nobody else can do that for you. That's the first thing you need to recognize. The second thing you need to recognize is that you're not going to be rich in 2 days. There's going to be that path where you're probably not going to see any money coming in, and you are going to question whether or not this is for you. And the only thing that will get you through that moment is your passion and your belief that you can get this done and that this is exactly what you want to do. And of course, financially, you shouldn't really go into a business unless you have some sort of buffer on the side to cater for those down months when there's nothing coming in, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have bills to pay. And I'm talking about bills at home as compared to the bills that are going to accumulate in the office and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I would tell anybody who's starting a business, make sure that you're passionate about it and you're not just doing this because you want to make some money. Because the minute you hit a stumbling block, you're going to walk away from it. You're not going to stick to it and tell yourself, you can do this, you can do this. You know that train story, I think I can.
Yes.
You have to do sometimes when you have your own business. I think I can. As much as people, and people have this way of, when they realize that you've hit a stumbling block, they always like to ask you, girl, you sure you know what you're doing? You sure you should go and get a job? I mean, and where where those comments come from sometimes are like some of the most unexpected individuals, and usually those individuals that you think that will propel you, which is also another negative factor that would really make you question, should I really do this? And that's why you have to be very passionate about what you're doing in order for it to succeed. And I'm not saying that my business is successful as yet, but I mean, success is all dependent on what you define it as. But there's so much more for me to do.
You said making it work in spite of. Why is making it work in spite of so important to you?
Because, you know, I'll tell you this. I'm an individual who believes that you must always give back. I'm that person who is always a part of something else to help somebody. I have a very soft heart, and it can work for or against me. But because of that soft heart, you will always find that I'm a part of some group that is trying to enable somebody that's less fortunate in some other aspects. So that's why you would see I'm a part of Lions. I knew from the minute that I had finished school that I wanted to be a part of something like the Lions organization. Then after being in Lions, I got involved in domestic violence, you know, and I have to balance dealing with my Lions responsibilities, because when you're helping somebody else, it becomes a responsibility because there's somebody that's depending on you to get something done for them. And, you know, to balance it, I've made it a family affair in the sense of my child is a part of Lions. Everybody knows Soleil. She has her own little jacket. Whether or not she's on the roll or not is irrelevant. She goes to conferences with me. She goes to meetings with me. Not everybody's appreciative of that, but I personally believe that once I expose, and let me speak personally for me, don't let me be general. Once I expose Soleil to environments where she sees her mother not only just giving back, but her mother taking leadership roles and her mother taking responsibility with respect to whatever task she has to do and completing it, I think that positively has an impact on any young child. And so I will always have her a part of all these activities. The only thing that I have not really brought her into, which helps me to get it done, would be the domestic violence.
Well, before we go there, I have some questions about that. I want to ask you this. The number one key for many in starting a business is confidence. How do you avoid confidence killers and stay focused?
You just ignore them.
Ignore them. Okay, it's good.
I mean, it's not always easy because I will tell you, the confidence killers have killed my confidence a few times. But you know what I do? I come home, I may sometimes cry, call a couple friends, fuss about it. I go through some, depending on who it's coming from, I may actually even question whether or not they might be right. Do they have a point? But I've found that that same friend that I spoke to you about who brought my first brief to me, he's actually the one person who has consistently said to me, what is wrong with you? Because every time I go to him, I say, boy, I really feel I should do this within the next 6 months. And he would always rock back and say, why? He walked me through the steps. And at the end of the day, he always reminds me that I need to be cognizant of the people that I have around me, that I make influential with respect to what they say to me. And he's right, because I've found that a lot of those naysayers are toxic, and I've made them kind of very distant, because they can really make you doubt yourself if you're not strong enough.
Before I ask you the next question, could you do me a technical favor? Just push your monitor out a little bit. I want to get some space between the top. Right, that's
Right.
good. That's wonderful. Tell us a phrase or quote often used that gives you courage and strength.
Say that again?
A phrase or quote that is often used that gives you courage and strength.
If I tell you I did not hear the first part.
Okay, tell us a phrase or a quote that is often used that gives you courage and strength.
Oh, that's a good question.
You want
Phrase or quote that gives me
strength or courage.
I say this every morning to myself.
Uh-huh.
I am renewed every day in what I am here to do by God's grace, be it whatever I have to do today, whatever I have to do on that particular day. I will continue the phrase that way. In other words, I believe that in saying that, I tend to give myself the energy and strength to get up and do all that I have to do when the day comes. Because I will tell you, the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is go through, before I even come off the bed, I pray, and then I go through the list of things that I have to do, from meeting, to court, to client, to Lions, to the shelter, to everything. And I believe that in order for me to accomplish everything, I have to embrace God, and I have to seek His guidance in whatever challenges may come my way. There's some moments that I forget to say thank you, but sometimes I'm just driving down the road. I swear to God, people probably think I'm crazy, but I'm talking to Him, telling Him, thanks for helping me see this, thanks for helping me to do that. And I believe that every time I get up and I stand in front of her and I say, I am renewed in the blood of Jesus Christ, in where I have to go and what I have to do, and I state what that is, it helps me.
Now that you've said that, if you are overwhelmed and feel a need for some alone time to discharge and recharge, do you reach out to an extended family of friends, neighbors, and community organizations such as a parents group or your place of worship?
I will more go to church sometimes.
Okay.
And just sit and chat. But I mean, I go to church as often as I can. Sometimes I will go to midday mass. Going to midday mass actually calms me for some reason. I always believe that if I've had a really hectic morning or I am anticipating a trying event the afternoon, I always make sure I go to mass, because when I leave church, for some reason, I feel better in what I have to do or what would have been done. But let's say I want an extended break from everything that's happening to me, I just pick up and probably drive to Mayaro, which is a distant place in Trinidad. It's about 2 hours away from me, where a friend of mine lives, and it's like going to the country. And I just go there, turn off my phone. I tell my family where I'm gone. They know my friend's number. The people who need to reach me, they know how to get me. And I just stay there for 2-3 days and just relax and unwind and come back.
Let me just go to the chat room. Dean said, absolutely correct. Ignore the naysayers and accept honest critique. Before I take a break, I want to ask you this. What are some things that you're passionate about, and what can you tell us about your passion for mediation?
Oh,
I see you smiling.
I think, let me tell you, I always believe that there's always a solution to a problem. And that solution really comes from when sometimes you can put yourself in the opposing party's position. And when I was in law school when I started to read up on mediation as an alternative dispute resolution, because in going through law school, I thought to myself, in reading a lot of the cases, why did this go to court? I can see that if there are two individuals sitting down and talking about this and have an independent third party there, that more than likely this would have been resolved. And ironically, around that time, the talk of putting mediation in a positive way in the court system in Trinidad and Tobago really started. So I then started to go to a lot of the small little mediation training sessions that would have been offered to varying mediums. And in doing the mediation training, I realized that I love this process. I think you can fix anything through this process once you have some willing parties that are before you. And from there, I started to take mediation into every job that I would have. And it's worked for me. And I always believe that, hey, let's sit and talk. The first thing, every time I find I have a matter and I believe that there is a possible point of resolution, once you can agree on 2 out of 5 issues, there's always a possible point of resolution. I always tell the other side, I said, well, listen, let's give this a try. You have nothing to lose except trying to save yourself some money, because I will be the one that's benefiting, but you can benefit more, especially if it's a family dispute. You can fix your family problem, solve whatever the underlying issues that would have brought you to court, and you will all go back home very, very happy. And in most instances, Selwyn, anytime you find parties going through mediation, you will realize that whatever they would have gone to court for or what they would have been arguing about was not really the true reason that they were pissed about. All right. Once they started to talk.
Let's take a break on that. We are back with the lovely Turkessa Blades. Turkessa, I want to jump into the chat room for a second. DSACCB said, appreciate your frankness. How have your parents or siblings influenced you or you them?
I think you probably have to ask my brother how I influence him, but my brother he's older than I am, and he has always been, let me put it another way, between the two of us, I've always looked to my brother to lead. And he's always led. He's always been able to come to me in shorthand and say, well, listen, why aren't you doing X instead of Y? And I'll tell you why. After I finished studying law from the law school, I didn't want to see law. After 5 years, I was sick of it. I was so sick of it that I sent in an application to BWI to be an air hostess, but they didn't exactly reply. They probably thought it was a joke that I wanted to be an air hostess at that point in time. And I wanted to do a master's, and my brother was like, well, what are you passionate about? And I said, I really don't want to go into an environment where I'm studying strictly law. I want a medium through which I can continue to study corporate law, but at the same time get some finances in there, some management in there, because I was so devoid of any other learning for the previous 5 years that I felt it necessary for me to have a mix. And my brother was the one that threw out doing my corporate secretarial certificate at that point in time. He said, well, why don't you go and look up ICSA? Had it not been for my brother putting that to me and probably even encouraging me in doing it, I would never have done it. Never. And I would never have been able to really go into that corporate secretarial role and further embark in the corporate environment legal area per se. I wouldn't have. That was just an example of one of the things that he would have done along the way. I look up to my brother for everything.
What do you think are the elements that make a good legal practitioner?
A good what?
Legal practitioner.
Well, I think you have to have extremely good listening skills, because your client can come to you and tell you the grass is green. You have to know whether or not this client really means that the grass is green, or the client is telling you that I really would like the grass to be green, but the grass isn't green. So you have to hear what that client is saying to you and get the information out of you so that you can represent that for that person. You have to be a very good researcher. You must know the law. Must know the law that you're going to be dealing with. Don't ever fool yourself in going into court and thinking that you can partially know the law and get away with it. In most instances, you fail. And I've learned that from experience in not being thoroughly prepared. You may not have had the time, and that's where the jealous mistress of the law comes in. It takes up all of your time to be good at it. In order to be good, you have to know the law. And in order to do that, you have to spend a lot of time on it.
I understand you're active in the Lions organizations, and you just mentioned that. Can you please talk a little bit about how you got started as a Lion?
Well, that also, I swear to God, it was like divine intervention as well. I have a friend, and this is a separate friend. His name is Trevor. I was expressing to him that, I want to get involved in a community activity. I just don't want to go out there and cook food and feed the poor on the side. I don't think that really has a serious impact. I want to do something that has an impact. And he invited me to a Lions dinner one night. He said, come, I have a friend who's a Lion, let's go to the dinner. I went to the dinner, and in sitting with all the ladies, because this was a club that only had women. They were trying to recruit him at the time. He dragged me in. And in sitting in the dinner, they started to talk about the food distribution project, where they were getting names from schools and churches and community centers within the area that they were operating of people who were less impoverished and really needed a helping hand around Christmas time. And what these ladies were doing at the time was that they were creating food baskets. And the food baskets would have had from sweets to flour to meat to rice to everything. I mean, it had enough to feed a family of four for about four to 5 days. And what I found even more unique about it is that they didn't just go to a supermarket and get canned stuff or bags of flour or whatever. They went to the wholesalers and got these very big 500,000 pound bags of flour and sugar. And they parceled out, they sat there for like 2 days and parceled out everything, made unique boxes to make it special for these people, make them, the recipients, to feel very special and so on. And I thought, just to give that extra touch at Christmas time to make a family feel a little bit more special, I was like, I want to be a part of this. And I participated in that particular project that year with them. And it was welcome Lions to Turkessa's life ever since. I honestly work hard at the organization. I believe in it. I've had to take a little step back ever so often in order to get other aspects of my life going, but I will always be a Lion.
And at present, you are, well, let me read from the chat room before I ask my next question. Rodel said, I agree that always exploring the option of discussion to solve problems. Unfortunately, text, WhatsApp, and Facebook has replaced real conversation. How can we get young persons to talk to each other more?
Ooh. In today's society, when everybody is looking at a cell phone or a tablet or a laptop or something, that's a tough one. How do you get young people to? Let me tell you how I get the young people around me talking. I basically tell them there is no way I'm having this conversation and you're on the phone. You're either having this conversation with me or we're not having this conversation at all. So let's take, for instance, Lions. We have younger Lions that we call Leos. Those are children from 12 to 18 or 18 to 25, 26, depending on the age group. And in every session that I would have been a part of with Leos, I've always said to them, in order for us to have any activity together, we're not going with a cell phone, you're not going to be engaged in a laptop. Well, let me give you a live example. I took a group of, I think it was about 30 of us. They aged from the ages of 17 to 25. We went to St. Vincent to do a youth exchange, and while in St. Vincent, we were going to do an activity. Our activity was to plant a garden at an orphanage and paint the entire orphanage. We had a weekend to get this done. When we when we got to the airport in Trinidad and I distributed the tickets, while distributing the tickets, I realized that once they collected the ticket, everybody sat down and they were like totally focused on something else. And I stood up in the airport and I brought all of them to attention and I said, listen, we're going to St. Vincent, and anybody who is found within 5 minutes on the phone, because you're going to call people, you're going to send messages, I can understand as a medium of communication, but it should not be your focus. You're going to have to pay. In Lionism, we have something called tail twisting. So you're going to be twisted, and you're going to be twisted in US. I tell you, it became such a competition to see who can be on the phone less that I realized that they were more interactive because they had an opportunity to actually speak to each other, actually engage in human contact from what I call it. And it worked for me then. And I've used that tactic ever since. Besides that, you can't really force people to communicate with each other. You just have to create the environment within which they wouldn't have much of a choice but to communicate with each other. And the only way you could do that, as far as I'm concerned, is take away all those devices. Just take them away. And you're going to be good.
At present, you are the region chairperson of Region 3. How would you describe the Lions organization, or what does it mean to be elected as region chairperson?
Well, in Trinidad, no, you're appointed. You're not elected as region chair. And once you're elected, essentially it's a role where you're like an overseer of clubs. In my region, we have 16 clubs, but I'm not doing this by myself. Those clubs are then divided into zones. Let me see if I can explain it in summary. In summary, Lions on a international basis is really like a big business. They have conformed the entity in such a way that you can manage not only the people in the clubs, but you manage the clubs within a district, you manage the clubs within a region, you manage the clubs within a zone. So you have international, under international you have varying districts, under districts you have regions, under the regions you have zones, and the zones are then comprised with varying clubs. The role of a region chairperson is kind of diminishing. You're more like a medium between the district governor, that's the person who runs the district, and the rest of the zones. Now, it's like a corporate secretary. You know, your corporate secretary is the medium through your board and management. That's what happens with your region chair. So the region chair basically has to send the message of your district governor, ensure that the zones and the clubs within those zones are doing the business of the strategic plan of the district, or they're trying to conform with that as best as they can. They make sure that their financial business is in place, because at the end of the day, when you're helping people, that's great, it's fantastic, it's good. But you have to do it in a medium through which you're accountable, because you're taking people's money, and what Lions is ensuring is that you're not misusing people's money for your own personal gain. So if you take money from the public, that money must go back to the public. If you as an individual Lion decide to give your club money, not a problem. You just basically state for what purpose, so that that club financially accounts accordingly. And as a region chair, you know, once you have clubs that are doing the business of Lionism the way that Lionism should be conducted, you don't really have that much of a job to do. You just basically rubber stamping.
Rodel said, interesting approach, clearly demonstrating leadership and take charge and making change happen. I want to shift gears a little bit. One of the things that so many people are talking about in the Caribbean are is domestic violence. How have you, as a board member of a shelter for women who suffer from the varying forms of domestic violence, shaped your perspective, or rather inform you of how very serious is this crisis?
Oh, I'll tell you this. You know, within the Caribbean, we're cognizant of domestic violence, and we have some laws that, you know, protect women with domestic violence, or even men, because that's, I mean, unfortunately, you have a lot of men that are abused, be it emotionally or physically, but within the Caribbean, they're not really treated as much with priority as you would find the women, unfortunately. And in being a part of this shelter, I've realized that on a whole, within Trinidad and Tobago, even our government, as much as they're happy to know that the shelter's there and they will give us some subvention, they're not going to go the extra mile to make sure that you stay open and you function accordingly. And that's regrettable, because that says to me that you don't see the sense of the shelter as of utmost importance as you should. Because, you know, within Trinidad and Tobago, it shocked me when I first started to be a part of the shelter as to the amount of women and children who come into the shelter. It's been so bad that we have had to put restrictions on the amount of people that we can bring in. Sometimes we have to put restrictions on women who may be coming with 7, 8, or 9 children, because at the end of the day, we have to house all these people. And, you know, you can't have one woman with 7 or 9 people, 9 children in the shelter, but at the same time, you can't bring in one with 2 children. So in order to try to be a little equitable, you know, we say, listen, children of a particular age, we're not going to be able to accommodate them. And it's unfortunate that we have to say that, but we have to say it because we don't really have the extensive amount of resources in order to expand where we are at, to accommodate everybody, or even to feed everybody. Because once you hit that shelter, we feed you, we counsel you, we house you, we give you a little stipend, And all of that comes from fundraising that we deal with. And the unfortunate thing is that it's not taken in such a serious light that, the government really helps us a whole lot more, or even businesses around Trinidad and Tobago help us a lot more. And that really says to me that even though domestic violence is out there for the rich, the poor, the black, the white, the green, the yellow, because we get of all classes and of all races
Can you
in that.
can you well before I ask this question, is your camera off to your right? Because you seem to be looking to your right. Can
Really?
you,
No.
yeah, can you look to your left so we can see your
Okay.
eyes? Yeah. Um, can you tell us how you got involved and what it means to be of service to your community in this way?
Say that one more time. You just broke up there.
Can you tell us how you got involved and what it means to be of service to your community in such a way?
Well, on a personal level, it just gives me a form of satisfaction
Okay.
that I've done something good. It makes me feel good to know that I have helped somebody
Uh-huh.
in some form of way to make their lives a little easier.
And,
And
and
that's just how I am.
and how has interacting with women who are victims impact you as a woman?
I'll tell you, when you first meet an individual who is emotionally upset by some form of abuse, it's very hard. I would say on every occasion that I have had to sit with those women and try to get out of them how I can help them. I think for them, remember, I'm a stranger. And yes, they've come to a safe place, but at the end of the day, they have to trust me. So it takes a lot of emotion out of you. It takes a lot of patience and empathy, because you have to really put yourself in that person's position, to see whether or not you can get that information out of them, depending on where they've come from. And the ironic part about our shelter is that we get them from all cultures. We've had the Syrians, we've had the Indians, we've had, and depending on the religion as well. So, it's draining, but when I eventually get to the point where I can tell them I understand, let's think about A, let's think about B, and they're actually communicating with me to the extent where I can help guide. I mean, I tell you, for me, there's no other better feeling than just sheer satisfaction. I mean, I'm not doing this alone, because our shelter has social workers that come in and, sit with the women separately, sometimes the children and so on, do the counseling. But after that counseling is finished, in a lot of instances, they need legal guidance.
So,
And that's where I come in.
so in your opinion, what do you believe are some of the main reasons there is such a proliferation of violence against women in the Caribbean?
I think most of it is frustration.
Frustration.
A lot of it is frustration, and there's another aspect of culture, but I think the part with culture is diminishing a lot, in the sense that, www is not World Wide Web for nothing. It's an information superhighway out there. So you would find that a lot of norms that would have happened back in the 70s, probably 60s, where depending on the environment within which that person would have been brought up, it may be a very hostile environment, and it's a norm for the man to be domineering and to the extent where he's free to bully and emotionally abuse and get away with it and so on. That is diminishing because people are now realizing that there is something called emotional abuse. It may not be physical, but there is something called emotional abuse. And in most instances, emotional abuse then elevates itself into physical abuse. So people tend to remove themselves before, but it happens a lot, mainly out of frustration.
I want to take another quick break, but before that, I want to address this or ask this question. Before you mentioned that what is surprising to you is the lack of full support from certain areas, certain groups, be it the government, be it private business, be it businesses, and so on. But I ask you this: if you had the ear of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad, What would you
No.
tell her, in addition to what the government is doing? I'm assuming they're doing some things, can be done to reduce and possibly eliminate the domestic violence against women in Trinidad?
Well, well, from the outset, no, I don't have the ear of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago.
If you were,
I've never really
if you were
put
to,
myself in a position to have the ear of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. That's the first thing. And I think even if I did, I don't know if, in having the ear of the Prime Minister, if that really should be the way that I or any of the members of the board for the shelter should really strive to get support. I would like to believe that we live in a society where we recognize that in order to have a functional society, we have to take care of the unfortunate ones within our society. And if we don't deal with the unforeseen, or I should say, unfortunate circumstances of varying types of domestic violence, we're going to have a society where we're going to have non functional individuals out there because people are going to be coming to work abused, people are not going to be able to function, people are not. I mean, it's a trickling effect, and it then goes on to the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. And we see that most of the people who come to the shelter are products of generations of domestic violence in most instances. You see that. I would say it's about 90%. Now, besides that, I would think that the unfortunate thing is that our society legally has recognized that there is a need to protect such individuals. We've just even passed our human trafficking laws. Now, it's fantastic that they've set up the unit that is actually functioning, and that unit is really getting the phone calls, getting the hints, finding women or even men or young children who are being trafficked, trafficked through Trinidad and Tobago to other destinations. Some of them are even coming here, and they're unaware as to where they're at and why they're here, and they're being used as maids in homes, practically semi-slaves. And the fact is that this trafficking unit is finding these individuals. The problem is that when they find these individuals, there's nowhere to put them except where? In our shelters. And we take them in. How could we say no? We take them in. And it's another area where I say, okay, I'm grateful for the fact that the government has recognized there's a need, but I'm saddened by the fact that they don't recognize that as much as there's the need, you need to put facilities in place to take care of those individuals who have that need. Because once you find someone who would have been taken advantage of on that level, they're lost in a system that they have no clue what the system is, where they're at. When you bring that person to the shelter, all that person wants to do is to go back home, no matter where home is, which then puts the perpetrator who would have brought them to Trinidad in a better position because the law says that you need that person to testify. But you can't keep that person here for 6, 7 months waiting for a court matter to come to hearing, and that's a downfall in a system where once you get that individual, they have to wait 6 or 7 months for a matter to be heard. There's no way you can take somebody who's that abused and ask them to hang around for 6 months. Just hold up in that shelter for me, please. That's not gonna work. So on one end, I don't know even if having the ear of the Prime Minister, who's a lawyer herself, is gonna help us in some form, way, or fashion. I would like to believe that our society is mature enough to realize that when you find circumstances like this, that it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that you protect the citizens and the visitors, because that's your role. That's part of your
Well,
role.
let's take a break on
arrowhead. I don't think you heard me. I said arrowhead. I love my golden arrowhead.
We are back with the lovely Turkessa Blades. Turkessa, can you hear me much better now?
I'm hearing you much better.
Wonderful. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I just want to go to the chat room for a second. Carol asked, "What is the hardest thing you have ever done?"
Childbirth.
Okay. And Carla asked again, "What is the greatest satisfaction as a women's advocate?"
This may sound bad,
Uh-huh.
but actually defeating some of the older gentlemen within the profession.
Say that again.
Actually defeating some of the older gentlemen in the profession.
I see. And why is that?
Because they always see you as, well, let me start from the inception. You have to remember that this legal profession was a male-dominated, hierarchical kind of profession. So you now have this mass influx of women, and it's not really easy for a lot of the older men to transition and accept the presence of so many women in show. So I've found myself in several occasions having doors slammed in my face, having men call you names in court, trying to intimidate you and that kind of thing. And it really does give you a sense of satisfaction that you can say less in a matter, but have the points on point, win that matter, walk out the room and still smile at them because you know they're grieving inside.
that is satisfaction, all right.
Yeah.
If you were to become, this is another hypothetical, if you were to become the head of CARICOM today,
The next one?
the head of CARICOM today, right? What are 3 important women issues you would address right away?
Whoa. First of all, if I became the head of CARICOM, I will have a nightly vigil because I think the first thing I'm going to have to address is the image of CARICOM. CARICOM is just basically seen for the most part as a non-entity by most right now, which is unfortunate because the rationale behind why CARICOM was created is truly, I believe in that rationale, not because my father worked there or anything like that, but I believe because the region is so small, we need somebody, someplace like CARICOM. So I'm going to deal with the image. The next thing I'm going to deal with, in dealing with the image, I'm going to deal with how the varying aspects, especially transition of labor on the CSM has been operating. Because even within Trinidad and Tobago, you have had, I on a personal basis, I have had CARICOM nationals come to me very pissed with the fact that immigration has basically refused their presence within Trinidad and Tobago under CSME to operate within whatever varying spheres. It could be any aspect, accounts, nursing, whatever. And that's not supposed to happen. And that's one of the reasons, that's a contributing factor to the image of CARICOM, regrettably. You said 3?
Yes, 3.
And the third thing I believe I would need to do is to revamp how the staff within the CARICOM Secretariat themselves project and operate. I think they have to recognize that they represent a CARICOM region and not the individual island that they would have come from. I think over the years we've had a lot of complaints about how individuals within the Secretariat itself would have been dealing with their CARICOM counterparts. Once my personal opinion, I mean, there's so many other reasons that I could get into, but I think on the forefront, that's what you're going to have to get, because you would really, I personally believe you need to have people buying into CARICOM again. We need CARICOM. It's just like the EU needs, the European nations need the EU, I should say.
Right.
We need an entity like CARICOM.
In the chat room, DSACCB said, awesome, actually defeating some of the older gentlemen. And Esther said, it doesn't sound bad at all. They need to respect their female counterparts. You go, girl.
I mean, I don't even think that happens only within the legal profession, you know. I mean, I can see the presence of women in a lot of professions upsetting the old hierarchy of things, you know. It's unfortunate, but change is inevitable. Sorry, it happens.
What lessons do you hope your experience as an entrepreneur can teach other young women who are single parents and are in business or thinking about embarking on developing their own business?
I think the first lesson that especially young women need to realize is that if you decide to get into a business, do not get into the business thinking that because you're a woman, that there are other people out there that are going to help you. No, you're in a business. You are now a part of an environment that has competition. That means that you're a competition. That means that unless that person is your husband or your brother or somebody significant to you, do not expect anybody to support you. Recognize that this is all about you. That's the first thing I think people need to realize. When you walk through the door, you're sending out an image, you know. The image part is something that always, you know, I tackle with a lot, because not every morning I want to wake up and take the time and fix the hair and, you know.
Is it important though?
It is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm often reminded about it by a lot of my friends. And I do the best that I could. I'm not saying that, you know, it works every day. It doesn't. So I tend to try to get hairstyles that I could get up, shake my head, and walk out, and it may possibly still work. But for the most part, my office has curling irons, combs, brushes, anything for emergency purposes. You know, let the business work for you. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing I think people need to realize. So depending on your social circumstance, your family circumstance, the business has to work so that those other facets of life don't really fall down. Now, it may, but when you recognize that it does, you pick up, you try to do better, and you dust off and you move on. The third thing I think people need to realize is that you're going to have points during the course of that business where, unless you are one of those individuals who never think negatively and you're continuously a positive individual, you're going to doubt yourself. Make sure that you really have the passion for the business, and during those moments, your passion and whoever is your God, because I mean, we have Muslims, Hindus, Christians, you know, lean on him, because you're going to need his help. You're really definitely going to need his help.
Talking about help, I don't know if this is a fair question, but I'm going to ask it. How have you been helped as a person by your occupation, and why?
By my occupation and?
And why? How have you been helped as a person by your occupation?
Say that one more time.
How have you been helped by your occupation?
How have I been helped by my occupation?
Helped, yes, helped.
I think people tend to believe that because you're a lawyer, that you're bright, and of course you're
Isn't
always
that so? Isn't that so?
Well, you know, that's the impression I get. She's must be very brilliant to be a lawyer in order to and have your own business. Oh, you must be very smart. I've never seen myself as a very smart individual. I'm a risk taker. You know, I look at my brother and myself, and between the two of us, I am more the risk taker than my brother. My brother is always very cautious. He evaluates by more than just the SWOT analysis. He has there's the SWOT analysis that you learn in textbooks, and he has his own SWOT analysis. Not me. I go back.
I
Environment, can I fit in here? Can I not fit in? And I run with it. That's not my brother. And that has worked for me in some instances, and it has not worked for me in others. But for the most part, besides just people thinking that you're bright, the other thing people think is that you're rich. I don't know why people believe that all lawyers have money. It's a gross misconception. The other misconception is that they believe that because you're a lawyer, you are supposed to be driving a particular car or living in a particular house. And I'm like, for that reason, I think I will never, but maybe I shouldn't say never, because you never could say never in this life. You never know what's going to happen 10, 16 years down the road. But because I know people have this perception as to what I should drive or where I should live or who I should line with, I do the complete opposite. I do what I want to do. It's comfortable for me, what I can afford. That's the other thing about being in business. People tend to believe that in dealing with this image, you embark on financial responsibilities that you're probably not going to be able to live up to. Your word is your honor. If you tell a bank, I'm going to pay you $2 per day, that bank must be able to depend on that $2 per day, because that's the same bank you're probably going to have to go to at some point in time to get an overdraft. So always consider your word always must be your honor once you do your business. If you're going to tell a man, I'm going to call you back, call that man back. Find a way to call him back. You may not be able to call him back personally. Get somebody, even if it's a staff member, to call him back to find out whether or not they're willing to give the information to them, or is it that they want the individual attention. And then that staff member explain, well, listen, this is what's happening to Miss Blades right now. She's unable to call you back. I will let her call you. I promise you, I assure you, she'll call you back tomorrow or something, to that extent. Customer service. We've lacked, within the Caribbean region, we've fallen down terribly on customer service. And it's a sad day. And I'm looking at it within Trinidad and Tobago in particular. There are two things you cannot depend on a man for. One, his word, and two, customer service sucks. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it. I fall down on it sometimes. But if I do, I always make it a point of duty to pick up the phone and call the client or whoever it is and say, listen, I must apologize. This has happened, so. Because don't break your bonds, and never let anybody believe that they cannot depend on you. They can't depend on their work. They can't depend on you. If you're not giving good service, they're not coming to you. You know what I mean?
I'm going to go to the chat room, and then I'm going to go back to some of my questions. And I want us to do some rapid fire because it's like 9:42, and we have a short space of time. So let's start with Karen G. See how quickly you can answer this, because this seems to be in-depth questions. Any suggestions for dealing with the gang violence in TNT and places like Laventille, etc.?
Yeah. People stop believing that picking up the gangsters on the road is a solution to the gang violence in Trinidad and Tobago. The problem with gang violence in Trinidad and Tobago is a social problem. We have a social problem because we have a lot of, it may sound like, we've been saying this for years, but we haven't dealt with it. We no longer have strong family units. Grandmothers are now 30 years old, great-grandmothers are now 40 years old, and they're not taking care of the grandchildren. They're not passing on the positive aspects of social graces. And when I say social graces, I'm not just talking about thank you, please, excuse me, good evening, good night. I'm talking about respect, respect not only for yourself, but respect for your elders. We've lost the family unit in supporting children that are going through school. There's nobody at home to deal with homework, to make sure that they go to school, to make sure that they do homework. Those things break down the family unit. Then there's a breakdown of the family unit, most of those children find an outlet somewhere else. The outlet then becomes the gangs. We have a lot of deportees that are coming back to Trinidad and Tobago. They're not dealing with the deportees to the respect of how they reintegrate a lot of them within society in a positive way. So what happens is that we have deportees coming back to Trinidad and just continuing the activity that they would have been engaged in despite where they would have come from. So we have a lot of social problems that are affecting especially the Laventil. It's not just Laventil, it's Laventil, it's Beatum, it's part of Carenage, part of Cocorite, I mean, parts of Arima. It's a social problem that we have. And we're not fixing that. And the fact that we're not fixing that, we're always going to have gang issues. Always.
Garland Thomas said, I like the way how you're expressing your thoughts. Have you ever thought of getting into national politics? I am proud of you. Before you answer that, Esther said, Dito, very articulate. And DSACCB said, lack of customer service is a global issue. So answer Garland's Thomas' question. Have you ever thought of getting into national politics?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm a secret politician myself. I don't believe within Trinidad and Tobago I will probably become an open politician. But I am, the behind the door politician that helps the politician. I've found myself in that situation several times because I believe politics is a medium through which you can really help other individuals. And because of it, I've chosen the individuals to help. Because those individuals that I would have helped in politics really have had programs and stuff that I would have been a part of to aid and abet betterment for whatever communities they would have been focused on at the time. So I'm a secret politician.
Okay.
Take it from me. I'm deep into politics. I've been trying to openly get my brother to go into politics, but he's not taking me on because I'm looking to push him, and I'll be the backdoor person.
And this is another quick question. How would you say is the Caribbean, but more specifically Trinidad, encouraging to women in business?
We're not. We're starting. I must admit, let me just not make it totally negative. We're recognizing within certain professions that, women are dominating in some. And because of it, you will find that they will be the business owners in those environments. So the acceptance is gaining greatly along the way. But it's slowly, in the sense that I still believe that men have it a lot easier in knocking on certain doors and getting certain contracts and that kind of thing because the boys' club is still there. Mm-hmm. Ironically, for us women, we haven't created the girls' club.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't think we should. I think people should really benefit from work off of their capabilities. I mean, it's an ideal position. I understand it, but I will work towards it. Let your work speak for yourself.
Are you in your dream profession?
Say that again?
Are you in your dream profession?
You're breaking up again, Selwyn?
Sorry. What about now? Is this better? Are you in your dream profession?
If I believe I'm a green profession?
No, your dream profession. Are you in your dream profession?
I think I am. I think that I have a passion for it. I don't have a passion too much for advocacy, but I have a passion for the legal profession and what it can do for people. The unfortunate thing is that I operate in an environment where the majority of people don't think like me. So I'm the outsider.
Karen G in the chat room asked, why do the islands still hold on to the Privy Council law and the archaic way there is so much change and we need to change some of our laws and functioning to adapt?
That is a never-ending debate. Now, we can't say all Caribbean islands. There's some Caribbean islands that would have signed up to the treaty to have the Caribbean Court of Appeal, the top court. That's existing right now. You have Barbados and Guyana and so on. The irony is that even though the court exists physically within Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad has not been a signatory to the establishment of the court within its court system, ironically. But you know what? Change comes slowly and gradually, I said. It's inevitable, but it will come. Because the Privy Council, I believe, is trying to get rid of us. Because the irony is that there's a great cultural disconnect between a lot of the matters that goes to the Privy council and how the lords have to determine the issues in it. So they're looking to get rid of us. We just have to leave.
I got you. And Rodel said the real test of a person's worth is their integrity and how they live their life. You can be worth millions to the person whose life you personally affect in a positive way. And G asked, do you think creating a girls' club that can break into the old boys' club can help to neutralize the boys?
I think we can. We have in some spheres. We've been breaking into the old boys' club. Look at the Queen's Park Oval in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, most people tend to say that the women are now a part of the Queen's Park Oval because you're just an economic cost. They needed the money, so they had to open up the market. But here's the point. Most of the old boys are dying, and they cannot hold on to that old boys club and function effectively without the women being a part of it. So they themselves have had to embrace us, and we're there. And we're going to be breaking down doors slowly but surely, but it will take time. And I'll tell you this though, we women tend to believe that we need to be in everything. I would like to let a lot of women out there remember that, we have a role in this life. We have roles as mothers, we have roles as wives, as sisters, and so on. And we cannot forget that in trying to pursue our professional careers, because what happens is that in our absence, our families are breaking down. And we can't allow that to happen much more. We have to take a little step back. Sometimes it takes a little self-sacrifice and deal with our roles within our homes as well.
Who are some Caribbean women in business that inspire you, or you respect what they're doing?
I'll be honest with you. One of the things I made sure that I was not going to do was to try to get a female mentor while opening business. So I've never really done it. I've never looked at and pursued what other female business women are doing. But what I will tell you is that there are in fact two women of two completely different cultures, two completely different age regions, who they have been very quiet in how they've been dealing with their business. And at the same time, they have managed to succeed in an environment that I function in, be it the single parent, the community activist, what do we say in Ghana, the pepper pot son,
Yes.
who's in everything. And I've admired how they've dealt with their business. Oh, sorry. I've admired how they've dealt with their business. So sorry about that. Somebody just jumped me. Yeah, so it has worked for me in that sense, in not looking at other people, because I don't want to follow somebody else's footpath. I want to make my own footpath.
In the chat room, Rodel said, G, I think women need to stop seeing each other as competition. What do you think? G said, I agree. That's why we need to come together. Putting up a united front can help. Carol said, what is most rewarding about what you do?
Well, I'll tell you this. I agree with Rodel. We women are really our worst enemies. Instead of supporting each other, we tend to bring each other down for the most part. And it's an unfortunate trait within our female environment. And that's why we can't seem to have an effective girls' club as compared to how the boys have an effective boys' club. But I'm hoping that, once my generation recognizes that that's a negative trait within our sphere, that we do better by it, which then creates a footpath for our children, our girl children, to, take it to the next plateau and probably create that. But what I don't want to happen is that we create such a good girls' club that we then tend to do what the men have done, and that's exclude them, because we learn from each other. Come on, man. We have positives and negatives within that environment. Exclusion has not worked in the past. It's not going to work now.
So inclusivity.
Say that again?
Inclusivity.
Well,
Inclusiveness.
inclusivity.
Yes, yes. So what would you want to do if you weren't a lawyer, Turkessa?
So when all your volume is killing me. Say
What
that.
what would you want to do if you weren't a lawyer?
What would I want to do if I
Yes.
wasn't a lawyer?
Yes.
I think I would have been a social worker.
Social worker.
Definitely.
And what do
Would
you
have been a
and
social.
this is a quick question, a quick answer question. What do you do for fun in Trinidad? Is it fair to ask you for a quick answer, Turkess?
I take a good drink with some friends on a Friday. I call up some people and they say, listen, we've had a love week. Let's go drink some wine. And we go and drink some wine somewhere.
What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? I am proud of two things. I'm proud of what I've done as a parent. I'm still learning with that. I have some ways to go.
Right.
But thus far, I'm proud of how that has worked out for me. And I'm also very proud of the fact that I'm still sitting here doing this, despite all the negatives that have come my way. I'm still doing the sole practitioner thing. You know, I know I have to plateau it to a different level at this point in time, but I'm really happy that I've stuck it out.
What mistakes in business would you say you have learned from the most?
Never undercharge.
Ne-
I have a very soft heart, and anytime somebody comes to me with a sad story, the first thing I think about is, oh God, how do I give them a discount and or how do I give them a payment plan? We already operate in a receivables environment within this legal profession in Trinidad and Tobago. And because of that, you know, having most of your accounts have very high receivables as compared to a very high cash flow does not always work for you as a new business person. So,
What projects or project are you working on now, if you're at liberty to tell?
say that what project I'm working on that what?
What project are you working on now, if you're at liberty to tell?
Okay, the second part of your question I'm not hearing.
If you are at liberty to tell, what project are you working on now?
Oh, well, I'm assuming that you asked me what projects I'm working on now,
Yes.
throughout in everything.
Yes.
Well, one, I am trying to fulfill when it comes to Lions, let me take Lions first. Within that environment, I'm trying to assist the district because we have a very bad visibility problem. We've been so busy doing the work that we forgot that as Lions, in order to get more sponsorship and get more buy-in to the Lions work itself, that people have to realize that we are here and this is what we're doing. So I am really trying to get most of the clubs and the district itself to push visibility in Lionism. So I'm supporting the district governor because that's one of his major goals. I'm supporting him with projects on the visibility aspect, with respect to walkabouts and so on. I'm trying to get a friend to do some pro bono work with me, and get a Lions with UN Day where, you know, Lions throughout Trinidad and Tobago wear their jackets or blazers for that day or the entire week. But as we discuss how we're going to implement that, it's now become not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in Guyana and in Suriname. So, you know, that project is getting to be much larger, but, you know, we're moving forth with it on that level. That's with respect to Lions. With respect to the shelter, I have been a little absent in the last year. So right now we're trying to restructure how our board has been functioning, which will then help us to focus a little bit more on our fundraising activities, because this year we have to stop operating out of a deficit. So we're looking at embarking on some other projects that's going to help us financially. And with respect to my own business itself, I am actually right now trying to restructure how I have been dealing with my own billing systems, management of clients per se, because I do not only corporate work, but I do some family and I do some land. So I have to try and streamline it in such a way that no one is left out. Period. So
Rodel said, if there is one lesson you would like your daughter to pass on to her daughter that she learned from you, what will that lesson be?
Oh, I have so many. There's one main lesson, and that is that she must live this life fulfilling the purpose that God would have sent her here for. And that may not be the easiest thing to do, but while you're doing that, recognize that you are to contribute positively to society. No matter what the naysayers do, in fulfilling your purpose, believe that there's a higher being there that is there to guide you. And in guiding you, just be positive. Just add positive energy no matter where you go.
Rodel said, okay, you have convinced me. I will join the Lions. As you look back,
Good.
as you look back to the young girl you were growing up in Guyana, what do you say to your 13-year-old self?
What do I say to my 13-year-old self? Stay exactly, continue to be who you are, because who I was at 13 is exactly who I am inside today. I've learned some lessons along the way that would have, helped me to rethink how I deal with certain situations. But for the most part, anybody who knew me at 13 knows me now. I'm the same joker, love to lime, hardworking Turkessa.
Are you still in touch with the other 7 of the gang of 8?
Well, I haven't been in touch on a daily basis with everybody, but we know through Facebook, through each other's activities, how everybody's doing.
Okay.
But out of the 7, I would tell you I am in touch with about 2 or 3 of them every day or every week at least. Yeah.
Esther said, really enjoyed this interview. Very informative and inspiring. Thanks to you both. Keep up the excellent work, Miss Blades.
Oh, tell her thank you.
Thank you, Esther. And what words of wisdom do you want to pass on?
To everybody who's listening to this interview, as we continue to live our daily lives, I would just like to let everybody know, listen, once you have a dream, once you have a passion, don't let the naysayers get to you. Get rid of the toxic people. Do what's going to make you happy. Always do what's going to make you happy. Because if you're not happy, this is not going to be a very fulfilling life on this earth here right now. So just go do what's going to make you happy.
And the last question, the question I ask every guest. What makes you laugh out loud?
What makes me what?
Laugh out loud.
Oh my God, I have so many things. I'm laughing every day, Selwyn. That could be, what makes me laugh out loud? What made me laugh out loud today? What made me laugh out loud today, I will tell you, because I laugh every day, is, we live in the Caribbean and we have a lot of hecklers or people who will joke with you and so on. And I was driving down the road and a man on the opposite end of the road going in the opposite direction shouts across the median while I'm at the traffic light and says to me, darling, I'm so glad to see you. I lose your number. I could get it, please. And for a minute, I swear to God, I thought I knew this man, not realizing that this was a man who was trying to get my number from across the road while I'm in my car at the traffic light. And when I realized how that was, I can't explain to you how I bust out laughing. I wouldn't want to do it live on your show, but I was all over the place. So listen, anything that is funny, anything that, just brings a spark, I laugh at. There's nothing in particular that makes me laugh.
And I'm tempted to ask, how much did you give him for originality?
What's that?
How much did you give him for originality?
God, Selwyn, your volume is
How
killing.
How much did you give him for originality?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I give that man 15. He made me stop. He made me stop and think, but wait now, who is that? Not realizing I don't know this man from Adam. He just wanted my number. So.
Rodel said, so proud of you. My wig flew off and that's it. My wig flew off and And DSACCB said, DWL, Caribbean men got to love them. And so, Turkessa, this has indeed been exciting and enjoyable.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, Selwyn.
All right. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Every day, more than 30,000 children around the world die of preventable diseases. More than 300,000 children are being used in war as child soldiers. Lord have mercy. A child should be loved. A child should be held. A child should be clean. A child shouldn't smell. A child shouldn't go to bed hungry at night. A child should be taught wrong from right. A child should learn to say thanks and please. A child shouldn't suffer from preventable disease. A child is a fruit that shouldn't be picked before it's time to do